What is a real man? And what do you need to do to reach that point in your life where you're like, yes, I am a real man? Well, I'm going to tell you a few things. I'm 41 years old, and it took me a while before I knew that I reached that point. It didn't happen at 18. So I'm going to go over a few things about what a real man is and what a real man isn't. And how do you know when you get there? Because it's not based off of certain things that people think that it is. For one, a lot of young cats think that once they reach 18 that they're a man. And I got news for you. Not necessarily. Because that doesn't necessarily have much of anything to do with it. When you reach 18, you become a legal adult. But that is not the same thing as being a real man. If you were 18 years old and you were still living with your parents and you have no vision of where you want to go or what you want to do, you're not a real man. Like, it's not the age that matters. And I'll give you a counter example. In our own country, there was a time a couple of 100 years ago, like in the Little House of the Prairie days, where boys were getting married, and I say boys were getting married at like 15 years old, and they would have them a wife of the same age, and they would marry the girl that was down the road, and then he would proceed to have his own land, his own property, and his own farm, and create a family at, seriously, sometimes 14, 15, 16 years old. So the fact that he already started supporting himself and doing what he was going to do for the rest of his life, that was a real man. Like it or not, at an early teenager, there's cultures around the world where they celebrate you becoming a man at like 13 to 16 years old. And normally that is followed by action. But simply the age itself is not what makes you a man. I know one thing. When I started, I count my adult life starting at after 22 years old, because for the first 22 years of my life, I was living with my parents. I went to college, started my college life, and was a college dropout after 2.5 years. And then I went from temp job to temp job, trying to figure out what I was going to do and find some place to get my feet planted. When I finally reached, when I hit 22, a little after 22, I landed the job that I'm still at today. And I've been working there for, approaching 19 years now. My adult life began after 22. So I consider myself being an adult for 19 years. But because from that point, I was making my own decisions, I was supporting myself, and nobody else could tell me what to do. But being a functional adult, in my opinion, is a little bit slightly different from being a real man, because I was still not firm in a lot of my decisions, a lot of my beliefs, and a lot of my stances in life. And this is what brings me into what being a real man is about. Two things. One, knowing what it is that is your direction in life. And two, going in that direction without being swayed from outer sources. When you've made, and this doesn't just encompass one area in your life. It's the way you feel about your work. It's the way you feel about women. It's your stances on creating a family. It's your stances on where you want to be and where you want to go. Once you hit to the point where you know that and you have a direction and you don't let others sway you one way or the other, then you have reached a state of being a real man. And when I reached that point, I was right at 30, 31 years old, where I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. Because I felt, when I was younger than that, when I was still in my 20s, and even though I had been supporting myself for years, for over half a decade, I was so unsure about myself. For some things, I was very easily impressed and easily swayed, easily moved on the direction I wanted to be and where I wanted to go in life. And when you can let others switch your stance easily, you're not a real man. Here's an example. You hear a lot of memes and stuff going around, like, a real man likes a woman that has some meat on their bones, or a real man, wants to provide or wants to, take care of his woman. And those things sound good, but the truth is, a real man likes what he likes, regardless of what other people say about it. For instance, if you feel in your heart that as a man you're supposed to be a provider for your woman, and you do that, regardless of what the economy says or what other people say about it or what the times are currently, then and you follow what you believe, that's being a real man. If you believe that because of the economical times, that being a full-time provider and you need a woman that's going to help you build and help you pay the bills and help, build your wealth together, and you abide by that, that's being a real man. In either stance, the point is not being swayed by what other people think, but making your own stance and going along with it. There's too many people, there's too many men, and I'm again using that term, in context, that are letting other people decide how they should handle a woman, how they should handle their career choices, how they should handle building a family, when they should get married. And they're turning into all these outward answers on what they should do. They're unstable. Even their stances on what they want, how they want to deal with women, as far as sexual goes, their sexual relations with them. Once you can look in the mirror by yourself and say, this is what I want, and this is what I'm going after, and I'm not going to let anybody else sway me, that is when you've reached being a real man. Now, here's a quick insert. You also got to understand that you're going to make mistakes. So if you change your stance simply because, I realized I was wrong, I'm going to change, that's still being a real man. Because sometimes the difference between right or wrong is merely perspective. So, also what works for you may not work for me or work for the next man. So you need to learn how to analyze things and learn how to move forward in a way that puts you in the best place for yourself in society. Because nobody else can tell you that. Nobody knows what gifts you have. Nobody knows what talents you have but you. Once you tap into those talents and know how to move forward and progress in the way that makes you the very, very best person you can be, then you've reached manhood at that point. And that does allow for change. That does allow for growth. That does allow for movement. So don't think that hey, this is the way I'm going to follow, and this is what it is. And then you realize, hey, I was wrong about this. I thought this is what I needed to do. This is what I need to do instead. Don't let that make you think you're any less of a man because you made a mistake, because you're going to make mistakes. That's just called being a human being. But once you at least are not swayed by outside forces just because you're flimsy on your stance, but because you know that this is the right path for you and the way you're supposed to go, then you've reached manhood. It's that simple. I think Cy Hacks described it as having a spine and having a pair. Now he went a different way than what I'm going with it, but it's one way to look at it. But anyway, I hope that this helps, and I hope that you can find the way that you're supposed to be a man in your own self. But I'm about to go to the gym, so I'll holler at y'all later. Uncle Step Bro out.